Thank you. First of all, very quick thank you to the people who invited me, who have hosted this event in this wonderful venue. Also to you for coming, and for the people who are watching it, and streaming it. So I hope to share some ideas on what's going to happen in the future. Very quick introduction about myself and kind of why I'm here today. So I work as an independent advisor. My background, as you can see, is kind of in the technology space. And really over 20 years, there's kind of an interesting thing. A lot of it has been about connecting things and connecting people. It's very much, although we talk about technology, a people-based business. And this is coming through again and again in a number of the conversations we've had this morning. The other interesting point to reflect on is a lot of the brands and businesses I've worked for no longer exist. They've transformed. They've sold. They've gone bust. So the common themes that echo my industry and your industry, I would suggest, is about, revolution, transformation, innovation, and constant change, whichever words you want to put to it. And the question becomes very much in each and every sector that I talk to is, do you want to disrupt or do you want to be the disruptor? And I guess my belief is, it's better to be the disruptor and making those changes proactively than having them done to you. So what we're going to talk today about is kind of future living. Now, it was with some trepidation when I started to think about this, and I think Mark Twain kind of puts it in context that goes, how are we going to do this? And it's kind of a scary thought. Whilst I was running SmartThings for Europe, we actually produced this report. It's a smart living, future living report by Samsung SmartThings. It's available on the web, and you can see various videos and information if you want to go and find it afterwards, or just approach me and I'll send you to the links. But this report was based on our belief that it's important to understand the future and what are the key trends, and to try and share those. And this was drawn up by senior academics, PhDs. We had space scientists, a whole range of individuals who put into this report. It wasn't me thinking it up. I mean, quite frankly, I'm not smart enough to do it. But, it was trying to draw those key strands and look at the future. Now, some of this is very much kind of near term, which is critical to you in your day-to-day role and how you perform. Some of this, and I make no apologies, is very Star Trek. So towards the end, we get into the, what's it going to be in 50 years, 100 years? And at that point, you've got to kind of hold your disbelief. But again, if you read sci-fi or are interested in anything such as that, a lot of the trends are based on real life today that have just been extrapolated out into the future. Now, when we think about it from the dawn of time, mankind has continued to evolve and change. They've wanted to improve, living standards, working standards, and basically build a better life and society for themselves as individuals. But when you think about it now, the pace of change just keeps picking up. Now, this is something, for those people who aren't familiar with it, it's called a Gartner hype cycle. And what it does, basically, it shows as a flow a new technology or product, and it moves through this classic cycle. And the way it works, very briefly, is you start off on the bottom left. You rise up to what they call this peak of expectations, where everyone's talking about this thing, and it's super exciting. A bubble, in other words. And then it goes boom and collapses down to this wonderful phrase trough of disillusionment, where everyone goes, oh, that was rubbish, and let's wait for the next thing. And then generally, people start to pick up from that, and it comes out on the right-hand side in terms of real tangible products and services that people consume and people can buy. Now, this is something from 2012. At the time, if you think about it, we were talking about, always-on connectivity. People were starting to bring their own devices into the office. Bring your own device, if you remember those sorts of things. And there was a big thing about different payment mechanisms. And if you compare and contrast and look at where some of these are in 2012, and the next slide we'll look at 2016, you can see progressive shifts. But, concepts around holographic displays is saying they're 10 years, on technology triggers. It's moved, but hasn't moved as far as we thought. Autonomous vehicles has moved on phenomenally. Google Car, Uber have done a deal, on self-driving vehicles, for example. Big data, as it was called then, has very much split down. So data analytics is core to the world we live in today and critical to the future world. And then cloud computing is kind of a given. You know, most people use Google Drive or Dropbox or those sorts of things as an individual. And from businesses, we use things like Amazon Web Services. So those start to become more mainstream. So let's flip forward to 2016, assuming with all my technology skills I can use the clicker, which I can't. There we go. And I'm just trying to draw out some key differences. Holographic displays, still stuck bottom left. It hasn't really moved in 4 years, even though 4 years ago it said, you know, it'd be about 10 years or more than 10 years. So it just shows, you know, this is not a fine art. This is a best view at a point in time. We were talking about 3D printing in 2012. We're now talking about 4D printing. We see, you know, this concept around it, really immersive experiences. So things like, you know, connected home, where I spent, you know, the last couple of years, and connected office and connected workspaces are really coming to the fore. And people, you know, it's about immersive experiences and using technology to make that a better environment to live, play, and work in. There's the rise of smart. So, you know, we've got drones, we've got, you know, automated vehicles. All this smart technology is starting to come in, and we're connecting more and more things over time. And underpinning that is a bit of jargon that they call IoT that we'll talk about in a minute. But basically, it's a platform, and everything connects into it, and then you can pull data from it. But also, you can send messages through it to perform an action. So open, shut, on, off, for example. So where is this kind of going? The key word that you may well have heard of it is IoT, or the Internet of Things. It used to be called M2M, but hey, things change, and we're now thinking bigger, and it's called the Internet of Things. Think about 20 years ago. You know, Internet was just coming along. People started to get the Internet. Then they got laptops, and then they got, you know, phones, and then they got smartphones. Interestingly, last night, you know, demise of BlackBerry was announced, which shows, you know, how fast, you know, technology choice and people's requirements change over time. A lot of the Internet of Things, it's all about making things smart. So, and this is revolutionizing every single industry that it touches, and it touches every single industry, and it touches every single individual. All of you there, all of your customers. And what this is about is Uber connectivity, to use that expression. It's connecting stuff, not because you can see an apparent reason at the immediate point, but you know it's an inevitability. So the question becomes not, why should I connect something, but why wouldn't you? And the answer is, you would. Cost of computing power is coming down, cost of raw materials coming down, and general processors are getting faster and faster when we see that, each iteration of technology. And what this means is the world in which we live in today is becoming super intuitive, super sensitive, and super intelligent. And that is totally changing the face of everything. If you look at the S&P 500, the companies top 5, top 10 today are all in the IoT and platform industry. A lot of them have no assets. You know, everyone talks about Uber. Uber doesn't own cars, quite obviously. Airbnb doesn't own physical space. But they're worth an awful lot of money because they're using this type of technology, embracing it, and changing their business model accordingly. I haven't got the knack with this. So what does it look like, or what could it look like kind of in the near term? So there's some key facts that I'm sure everyone's aware of, but you know, in terms of cities, by 2014, in 2014, 55% of the population lived in a city. And it's growing by 1.6% per annum. So we're getting more and more people coming into our cities. We're also, and we'll talk about it later again, an aging population living there. And the young people who are coming in are children of the IoT age. So they want always-on connectivity. They want everything now. It's like that. If you've got children like me, you can't really talk to them. They're always in the phone. They're always in their iPad, right? You try and have a conversation. You You've got to talk to them through WhatsApp or something like that to engage with them. So the employees of tomorrow will very much be like that as well. Concepts of ownership are changing. They don't want to own stuff. So you get, much more sharing economy. So they'll share space, they'll share offices, they'll share homes. They don't necessarily want to own it. Now, as these cities grow, quite obviously, we'll still need office space. We'll still need living space. So that space starts to change and needs to change quite quickly. With this embedded technology going to more and more buildings, it gives us the capability to do that. There's also technologies available that you can retrofit into buildings at a very, very cost-effective level that are quite simple to change the way those buildings function as well. So it's questions of degrees of automation. But you start to get ideas like flexible walls, which sounds a bit crazy, but isn't really. So why should you have an office in a certain configuration? We were talking about, moving away from cubes into open plan. Why not have flexible walls and offices? So if you're having a meeting with 20 people, you need a bigger room, quite obviously. With this sort of capability, you can physically move the office walls and create that. With things like 3D printing, it's got to the point where then you go, hey, I've got 20 people, I haven't got 20 chairs. You can print them, right? You can print physical assets. And these printers are changing the world. So you get this concept around immediacy, and then when it's gone, you can just fold it back in. The same thing is true in a home. And what we're seeing is because of some of these space constraints, the home and the office environments are blending together, and people don't see the distinction between personal and business or home and work, and are often combining those spaces. Even in overall buildings, you'll see, offices and homes, we believe, start to be in the same building, which is kind of a crazy idea. So as you get these sensing buildings, things really start to change. And because we're wearing more and more sensors, be that a wristband or a phone or actually in the fabric of garments, you can build personal environments for the individual or group of individuals because it can sense who it is or the number of people and change accordingly. So it could be about temperature, it could be about the type of lighting, how strong, what shade. And it's truly, truly starting to sort of merge those two together. So this concept of hyper-flexibility becomes kind of key. Got it. I'll have figured this out by the end. Again, think about how we're decorating our homes and offices. With this sort of technology, virtual reality, you can go into a store today and try it out. And augmented reality, it's starting to change. So there's concepts around effectively a blank canvas. If you want a Picasso up there, you can create it, you could put it up, and you could see it. If you wanted a sculpture, you could buy the pattern, go and print it, put it in your room. If you want to put a project plan up on the wall, or photographs from your employees, you can just throw them up and change them dynamically using this sort of capability. So it's all about, embedded LEDs and this image projection. It's possible. It happens. I've seen it. 3D printing enables full customization. So, you start to take an idea. You could buy it off the shelf through templates. Think about how you buy an app. You could buy a 3D pattern and just print it out like that. If you like something, print it. The cost is negligible. And this is going into homes today or 3D print shops. And it's all algorithm driven. So what we're finding is these algorithms that we use to make day-to-day decisions, it's called machine learning as well, is starting to change the way we're designing as we learn. The machine learns how we're using buildings, adapts and changes the configuration accordingly. This is not new in terms of the green kind of agenda, to use that phrase, and self-sustaining. But what this is saying is that trend will continue and will extend and become deeper. So integrated recycling is about 3D polymers. Typically, you can break down and recycle much more easily. So you improve life that way. Buildings are going to take all the waste, human waste to rainwater, to paper, to plastics, and be able to recycle those and generate heat or light or extract pure water from them and feed those straight back into the buildings. We're already seeing, things like hydroponics, where people are using that water, or aquaponics as well, which is where you use fish waste actually to grow materials in buildings. So if you think about your canteens, they could very well change based on this. So within your building, you could be growing your own material that the chef can pick and then cook for lunch. And it was picked literally 30 minutes, an hour ago, which is just an amazing concept. Materials are changing as well, so concepts around self-cleaning. There's new polymers coming out. And what that means is, so be it glass, be it building walls, be it work surfaces, won't need cleaning. They'll automatically be hygienic. It changes the way we need to look after our living and working environments. We'll need less products. We'll need less people to do those sorts of things, because it will automatically be done for us. And there's even concepts around self-repairing materials. So these are, for example, in concrete now, in certain types of concrete, they're putting bacterial agents. So they're taking a lot of ideas from nature, and these bacterial agents, when there's a crack that starts to appear, it actually fills that crack automatically. So running repairs and maintenance and those sorts of things become reduced. Again, changing very much the requirements of some of the industry. Moving a bit further forwards, so this is where you've kind of got into your Star Trek kind of piece coming on, is what does this mean? If we've got all these people in cities, but we're also going to be able to put people, aquatic cities. And the belief is here, obviously this is much more future-facing, but these are self-sustaining communities using the same principles that we talked about before. But they can move, they can travel, and people can go on these. And they're going to generate their own power. They can pull, clean water through desalination out of the sea. And they can store that power as required and then draw it down. The growth in battery technology is phenomenal, and that starts to drive a lot of these changes. But it's also true that on land, then, people want to go up and go down. So you get these sorts of ideas. So as materials become stronger, and we talked about the aging population and the bigger population move into cities, you go up. You can see this already, in Dubai, whoever's built the latest, greatest, most tallest building in the world. And it's continuing in London, where I come from. This is happening more and more, and radically changing not only the viewing perspective, but the requirements in that city that you need to provide to cater for that sort of accommodation and those sorts of buildings. How's it going to be built? It's going to be built by robots. Google are already doing this in Mountain View. They've got robotic arms. They've got drones that are carrying this stuff to building sites. The sections are pre-designed using algorithms, are printed in 3D in some cases, and building prefabricated sections that are automatically shipped to site and then bolted together by robots. It's just phenomenal. And it's also super, super cheap. So as you're going up and up, there's some ideas around, we'll change the way we're going to travel, right? We want to travel up here, not down here, if it's a 50-story building. So you start to get into, if Amazon can deliver parcels using drones, it doesn't take a leap of faith to say, at some point pretty soon, they're going to carry you and me in those sorts of things. So that's when these sorts of things start to come in. But it's also true, as you go up, people are going down more. Again, you see this more and more in London. And that has some advantages, but also some complexities. Construction becomes expensive and complex, but it does protect from some of the environments. Artificial intelligence. This is going to be massive. And this is where all the technology companies today are investing, a significant proportion of their money. So artificial intelligence, or AI, is where man and machine kind of come together. And that can be quite scary for some people, right? But it's happening. As that happens, you optimize, and it's a self-learning machine, so you get better and better decisions. It can cope with more and more data that's coming in from this IoT, Internet of Things world, that a human brain can't possibly cope with. And it can rationalize that and either make decisions or make suggestions. When you get to that stage, you move into concepts around kind of thought control. So you'll be able to control some of these environments using AI, or AI will suggest to you, and you simply go yes or no, here's what I want. Meetings will become old hat. You won't need a physical meeting, arguably. You won't need a Skype meeting or whatever you happen to use again. You can use holograms. If we've got virtual reality and we've got augmented reality, which is putting it in a real-life environment, the next obvious leap is holographic displays. So you can be physically spiritually, if you like, and emotionally in that meeting, although physically you can be the other side of the world. Very much changing people's lives. Incidentally, what does this mean? There's going to be less travel, quite obviously. Arguably, the working week will reduce as we become more efficient because we're traveling less. And technology is taking more and more of the load off us. And you start to change the practices of business. So cashless societies in offices, digital currencies and those sorts of things. Bitcoin is already happening and gaining traction in certain areas. As the population gets older and older, what else do we see? Well, you start to see the concepts of, we've already got wearable devices, right? Probably a lot of you have got a Fitbit or something such as that, and that pops back into an app. You can stream that device from your wrist, and it becomes more complex. The clothing you now buy in terms of gym wear has sensors in it. It can monitor heartbeat, blood pressure, it can look for signs of diabetes, it can do all sorts of amazing things. So it becomes very personal. It's about personal diagnostics. And it may be then, say within an office, you could download that information. You could get an analysis through a machine, and it could prescribe medicine. You could do that within a single building. You wouldn't need to go to the GP. You wouldn't need to go to a pharmacy. And that's all about improving, your employee's life or your individual life. Operations become robotic. It's happening already. There was a piece, I think it was last week on the BBC News, where a leading surgeon in the world, I think it was a leading eye specialist, had used a robot arm remotely to operate on a patient. Now, this was a top surgeon. And the reason was the physical trauma through the operation was minimized because of the capabilities of the robot. It wasn't the robot did it entirely on its own. But he used that as a tool to deliver the best possible result. As we get more time, it's going to be amazing, right? Commercial space flights, SpaceX, they're re-landing already and reusing devices. Elon Musk just, he's been talking about going to Mars. So we'll be able to go around the world much, much quicker. That's commercial flight as well as on, personal. So if you do need to travel, and the hologram isn't really doing it for you, you could get on one of these and get around the other side of the planet super quick, maybe. Drones become bigger and stronger, as we get autonomous vehicles. So that can move homes, it can move people around. And then 3D printing and ultimately 4D printing means not only printing chairs and tables and glasses of water maybe, but you can print food and things like that. Again, think about a favorite chef. You could download the recipe and print that out. That would be kind of cool. That's starting to become possible. And ultimately, it changed the way society works, in terms of, there's just some ideas there, but holographic dating as an example and programmable pets. I don't know. It's a bit too much for me personally, but I'm sure for some people they're going to love it. It's the next version of Tinder. So to close, where could this start to go? This is looking further out, but clearly this is starting to be possible. If you think back to where we started on this journey, it was about mankind's never-ending desire to improve. That will inevitably lead us to explore other parts, right? They're already looking for new planets. Think of what's required to support that sort of population in terms of physical buildings and support materials. It's going to be radically different. Pretty much final slide as a quick quote. I think the important thing here, and I heard it again this morning, and I absolutely agree with it. At the end of the day, this is about people, right? We've talked a lot about technology and what it can enable, but at the end of the day, it's people. It's people like us. So, Albert Einstein, very, very smart guy, quite obviously, but, he expressed a fear, and I think it's a real fear that we just need to bear in mind as we use some of this technology and don't lose sight of the power of it. So hopefully that's given you a good view of both the near term and certainly the longer term of where some of this stuff is going. I'd urge you to just reflect on how it's going to change your jobs, how it's going to change the needs for your customers, and how it's going to change your life as an individual. And reflect on that, because it will radically change the world in which we live, and therefore will I think, be a much better place. But you need to innovate and embrace it and work with it would be my suggestion. Thank you very much for your time.